We are student-assisted medical and dental applications, a society at Barts in the London School of Medicine and Dentistry, but you can call us SAMDA. As a society, we are dedicated to support schools, colleges and sixth form students in their first step towards a career in medicine or dentistry. We conduct school visits to give you that personal guidance, clinicians' evenings with prestige alumni and professionals, skills days to equip you with all the skills to ace the application, mock interviews with students and clinicians to give you that first-hand experience and get you ahead of the game, a buddy scheme so that we at SAMDA can support you every single step of the way, weekly tips on our social media to give you some bite-sized and concise wisdom and advice. If that's not all, our extensive SAMDA medicine and dentistry guide and much, much more. Check out our social media and stay up to date. We are only a click away. We are student-assisted medical and dental applications, a society at Barts in the London School of Medicine and Dentistry, but you can call us SAMDA. As a society, we are dedicated to support schools, colleges and sixth form students in their first step towards a career in medicine or dentistry. We conduct school visits to give you that personal guidance, clinicians' evenings with prestige alumni and professionals, skills days to equip you with all the skills to ace the application, mock interviews with students and clinicians to give you that first-hand experience and get you ahead of the game, a buddy scheme so that we at SAMDA can support you every single step of the way, weekly tips on our social media to give you some bite-sized and concise wisdom and advice. If that's not all, our extensive SAMDA medicine and dentistry guide and much, much more. Check out our social media and stay up to date. We are only a click away. We are student-assisted medical and dental applications, a society at Barts in the London School of Medicine and Dentistry, but you can call us SAMDA. As a society, we are dedicated to support schools, colleges and sixth form students in their first step towards a career in medicine or dentistry. We conduct school visits to give you that personal guidance, clinicians' evenings with prestige alumni and professionals, skills days to equip you with all the skills to ace the application, mock interviews with students and clinicians to give you that first-hand experience and get you ahead of the game, a buddy scheme so that we at SAMDA can support you every single step of the way, weekly tips on our social media to give you some bite-sized and concise wisdom and advice. If that's not all, our extensive SAMDA medicine and dentistry guide and much, much more. Check out our social media and stay up to date. We are only a click away.
Hi everyone, I'm Jaina and I'm a final year medical student on the graduate entry programme at Barts in the London.
And I'm Abisha, a third year JEP student at Barts.
We'll be your hosts for today's Pathways to Medicine event, where we will be joined by medical students who took various routes into the degree, and also Dr. Braun, the head of graduate entry medicine at Barts.
This event is open to everyone, so please do share the YouTube live stream link to anyone who you think might benefit. Also, you will get a certificate of attendance at the end of the event. Jaina is now going to tell you a little bit more about who we are as SAMDA and what we do.
SAMDA stands for Student Assisted Medical and Dental Applications. We are a widening participation volunteering group based at Barts in London. As the name suggests, we support highly motivated sixth form students from local state schools towards a career in medicine or dentistry.
As a widening participation group, we focus our efforts in helping level the playing field. We do this by providing free access to resources and events like this one that help with personal statements, interviews, entrance exams, and all sorts of things. Jaina is now going to speak a bit about safeguarding measures that we have in place.
Thank you, Abisha. So because we have under 18s in our audience, we're limiting interaction by turning off the YouTube comments and live chat. Having said this, you'll be able to interact and ask our speakers questions in the live Q&A by submitting questions to our Instagram story. I'll explain this more on the next slide. Of course, all participant information will remain confidential. However, when you do submit a question, make sure you don't put any personal information or use any inappropriate language. In terms of reporting inappropriate activity, please email us this with your school teacher CC'd in, and then we can escalate that as necessary. If you have any general questions that aren't specific to SAMDA, aren't specific to the Q&A, but instead are about SAMDA events or the application process, again, you can email us with the teacher copied in, and we will happily answer your questions.
So how can you ask questions for today? There'll be a live Q&A at the end of the event. And like Jaina mentioned, in order to submit questions, head over to our Instagram. The handle is @Barts_SAMDA. And on our story, there's a post that looks just like this one on the slide here. And you can use that to ask questions throughout the event, anytime you feel like.
Here's the itinerary for tonight. Feel free to take a picture or a screenshot of this, and you can save the entire event, or you can turn up to the specific talks that you're interested in.
To start things off, we have our first speaker for the evening, Dr. Kristen Braun. She's involved in many different aspects of biomedical education, and one of her key roles includes being the head of the graduate entry medicine program.
Hi, Dr. Braun. Are you ready to give your presentation?
Yeah, I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay, yeah, whenever you're ready. Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead. Your slides are on the screen.
Fantastic. Hi, everybody. So my name is Dr. Kristen Braun, and I'm the head of graduate entry medicine at Barts in the London School of Medicine and Dentistry. And I've been asked to kick off today's session by introducing alternative pathways to medicine. So I want to start off by acknowledging that getting into medical school is hard. And this year, it's been particularly hard. So this is an article that was published in February 2021. And it talks about the fact that medical school applications were up by a fifth. Now, there were more places offered this year, but still, it's been a really challenging year to get into medicine. So certainly those of you who are registered on this call, you're not alone. And there are a lot of people who were disappointed in not gaining a place in medical school this year, who I think would have been brilliant medical students. Now, having said that, when you get to my age and you're not young anymore, you realize that life is rarely straightforward. We often set a plan and we think, okay, this is the direct line to that plan. But in reality, that's not the way things often happen. There are potholes along the way. There are unexpected obstacles to overcome. And in reality, although it seems very frustrating at the time, those obstacles often can add to resilience and to a person's fortitude, which allows them to be more successful in the long run. So, I don't think you should feel too discouraged by the fact that maybe things didn't quite work out the way you'd hoped this year. Now, having said that, I understand all of the work, all of the really hard work that you've put in, and that to get an outcome that you weren't hoping for is very frustrating. So do take the time to heal and allow yourself the time to kind of to reflect upon what's happened.
But I want to move on to a more positive message, and that is that things usually do work out. And I'm going to show you 3 examples of people who had some bumps along the way in medical school and how their lives turned out. So first of all is Dr. Sally Picken, who published a nice article in The Guardian a few years ago. I've put the link in here in case you'd like to read the full article. And she talked about how she wanted to be a doctor, and she basically blew her A-level results and was incredibly frustrated. But she went on to do a biomedical sciences degree, reapplied to medical school, and then went on to become a GP. And she talks in this article about how, in the end, she felt like that process, those additional years of study, helped her to mature and actually to be in a better position to be a better medical student and a better doctor at the end of the process, and how it actually, she felt it advantaged her. So a second example is Professor Trish Greenhoff. Trish is a leading professor in primary care in the UK. She's based at the University of Oxford. She used to be at Queen Mary before that. And she has been a leading advocate in this country for the introduction of masks, way before anyone thought masks would do any good in the COVID-19 pandemic. And her Twitter feed is really worth looking at if you'd like to follow some leading edge medical research. But she published something a couple months ago, which I thought was really interesting. And she said, I was one of only 2 students to fail the first ever OSCE at Oxford in around 1980. And this was in response to somebody else who'd failed a medical exam. So her point was, can you imagine how devastating that was to be at Oxford and only be one of 2 who failed? And now she's a world-leading researcher in primary care. So there are bumps along the way, and she's turned out just fine. The final example is someone I suspect you'll recognize. So this is Charles Darwin. So Darwin was a medical student, and he didn't do well. He neglected his medical studies. He eventually dropped out of medicine, and his father said very helpfully, you care for nothing but shooting dogs and rat catching. And then Darwin went on to try to study a second degree, dropped out again. So things really weren't going well. But I think you'll agree that it probably turned out okay for him. So he left a career in medicine and obviously went on to become one of our most famous evolutionary scientists, probably the most famous ever. So this is a good example of 3 people, one of whom struggled to get into medical school, one of whom struggled, and 2 of whom struggled during medical school, one of whom went on to become a doctor, and one of whom chose a different career path. And I hope you'll agree with me that each of these people's lives turned out and their careers turned out well anyway. Okay, so having said that, I think a really key question to consider is why do you want to be a doctor? And I think even do you want to be a doctor? And this is a point of a good time to reflect on this question and make sure that if you decide to continue pursuing this aim, that is because you want to do it and not because perhaps you feel you should do it. A medical career is very rewarding, but it's also very challenging, and it's a long training track. And just take this opportunity to reflect and make sure that this is truly the path for you. If you answer this question positively, yes, I definitely want to pursue being a doctor, then keep going, okay? There's lots of people who don't get into medicine initially and then get in at a future point in time. And the process for keeping going, I think, is to really start by critically reviewing your previous application. When we review applications at Barts, and I think this is pretty true for most medical schools, there are basically 3 elements. So one is the candidate's academic performance, or predicted marks. The second is how the candidate did on aptitude testing. So for example, we use the UCAT. And the third is how the candidate performs at interview. So it's worth reviewing your application and thinking about these elements and whether there are any areas in which you can make realistic improvements to your application, either in the short or the longer term. In terms of what attributes you need to demonstrate, of course, there's intellectual ability, and we evaluate this by looking at a student's previous marks, as well as their aptitude test, the UCAT results. And then in the personal statement and in the interview, we look for softer skills, so evidence of commitment, interest, and awareness of the realities of medicine. And to enhance this part of the application, you could do paid work or voluntary work, demonstrating that you have these abilities, or take on work experience. But we definitely want to be convinced that our candidates have an understanding of the challenges of the career and a real understanding of the pathway of training of medicine and what that involves. We also want our candidates to develop transferable skills such as teamwork and leadership, communication skills, empathic traits, and resilience. And basically, you should be able to pull examples from your life experience to demonstrate all of these different attributes to make your application as strong as possible. Okay, so the next step is to consider your options. So one option is to try to improve your A-level marks. This is just a complete hornet's nest this year, as you know, and it is not my area of expertise. So I would recommend, if you think there's a pathway that's open to you, that you talk to your school and see whether it is worth trying to reset A levels. I just don't understand how that process works at all, and I wouldn't want to advise you. Another option is to take a gap year and reapply and use that gap year to help yourself grow and enhance your application. And I'll come back to that in a second. And a third option is to do a degree and then consider reapplying in the future, or consider whether you want to reapply in the future, to be more specific. So a few thoughts about a gap year. I think a gap year can be a really good option for certain people. One thing is you can consider how to reapply with an improved application. So if you look at those 3 elements earlier, are there ways that you can improve your UCAT score or your kind of soft skills and knowledge of the career so that you perform better at interview? Is one possibility. Another nice thing about a gap year is you can earn some money, maybe have a bit of a break from this kind of roller coaster of studying very hard that you've been on for quite some time. And you can also use a gap year to enjoy your hobbies and develop as a person, and possibly even travel, depending on where we're at with the pandemic. So this would let you, after a single year, to potentially re-enter the pathway to medicine, perhaps in a stronger position. Just one thought about studying for a degree if you decide to do this. I think this can be the default choice for a lot of candidates who don't get into medicine, and that's fine. It's really important, though, that you're excited about that degree, because whether you use that degree as a springboard back into medicine or whether you pursue the avenue that degree leads you in, you're going to want to do well on the program. And the only way you're going to do well on the program is if you're genuinely excited about what you're studying. So the one thing I wouldn't recommend is just doing a degree for degree's sake, because you don't know what else to do. I think you'd be better off taking a break then and then coming back and doing a degree when you're excited and you know exactly what you want to do. Okay, once you get to reapplying, it's important to make smart decisions. Think carefully about your strategy. And I always tell, when I'm advising my students, I always tell them to wait until they have all the data. So they'll know their marks or the grades, they'll know their UCAT score. And once you have all that data, then you can start to think about the best way to use your application and prepare your application. And one tool that you can use is that each of the medical schools will publish their admissions criteria, but also their admissions statistics. So like at Barts, we list the UCAT scores that were the cutoffs in previous years. And by using this data and comparing with the admissions criteria for the different schools, you can use your 4 choices very wisely. It's okay to have a bit of a dream school in there, but because we have so many applications, the rules don't get bent. So if your UCAT score is nowhere near what was accepted previously, then that probably isn't a good choice of a place to put on your list. All of the medical schools, or the majority of the medical schools in the UK, are GMC accredited. They're good medical schools. You get good training and you can go on an excellent career as a doctor. So while it's certainly okay to have your dream school, don't be afraid to consider some places that maybe weren't exactly top of your list if your absolute priority is to become a medical doctor, and give yourself the best chance of doing that. And then my final slide, I think it's really, really important to find your path forward. And, if you take this time to reevaluate what you want to do and consider all the career options and think about why you want to be a doctor, you may find out that you're being led off in a different direction. So I've done a little word cloud here. Didn't take all the words I put in, so not everything's there. So some of these are medical paths, but some are some other careers that have overlapping skills and interests with the medical pathway. So maybe you're more interested in research, or you're really interested in patient care. So there are a lot of different options that you can pursue where you can pick up some of these things that are attractive in a medical career. So thank you for your time and attention. I hope you found this helpful, and I'm sure you'll find the rest of today's session helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Bourne, for sharing your insight.
Okay, so moving on to our next speaker, we have Rafi, he's a third-year medical student who took a gap year before studying medicine. And he'll be talking to us about his experience with the gap year.
Okay, so hello, my name is Rafi, and as said before, yep, I'm going into my third year at the moment, and it's been such a long time since, it feels like a lifetime ago, just thinking about my gap year, what I did, and so on and so forth. So hopefully I can share some experiences, and I can share some mistakes that I've made as well, because it's very easy to make mistakes during your gap year. And yeah, it can sort of impact, which direction you want to go in terms of medical applications and so on and so forth. So, let's get right into it. So basically, my first time in applying, this is just like the overview of my application. I'm not going to go too in depth into it. But as you can see, basically, I've had strong points and weak points. And one of the things that I want to say is the fact that not everyone's application is strong all round in every single area. You'll still have weaknesses. And like Dr. Bourne said that, you have to sort of strategically pick your universities that you want to apply to. So for me, because I scored on the lower end of UK CAT, or I think it's called UCAT now, I applied to Cardiff and UEA, which means, those universities, they put less weight onto the UCAT. And to be honest, guys, I got all the interviews. So my application was okay, as in, it was acceptable. But the thing is, I didn't convert any of those interviews into offers. So I understand that I've gone through it and it's painful. You make so many mistakes, or you think that you made so many mistakes, you ruminate over it. So you just think that, you've done something wrong. But I'm going to tell you guys that for someone who's been through it, you come out a much better person at the end, whether you're doing medicine or not. There's so much sort of wisdom and skills that you can learn throughout your gap year if you decide to take one. And hopefully I'll be sharing some of them as well. So the first thing that I did was I sort of identified my weaknesses in my application. Well, to be honest, more with the interview side of things. So when getting my feedback from the interviews from the medical schools, I barely reflected on my experiences. So as you guys saw in the previous slides, I've had quite a bit of experience. So youth club for disabled children, I volunteered at, shadowing as well. And I think I shadowed at the opticians as well. But that's all good on paper. But when it actually comes to the interview, when the interviewers are more interested in what you've actually learned, what's your emotions? Did something change inside you because you did this particular activity? They didn't see that with me, basically. And because of that, they weren't sure that, I wanted to do medicine for the right reasons, or they couldn't actually see any reason for me to do medicine. And on top of that, I did very little research into medicine and science as well. So what I mean by that is the fact that when you're going into medicine, I'm not saying that you should have a previous degree or that you should be a scholar already, but you should have sort of idea of what's happening in the NHS, the problems that doctors are facing, the role of doctors and nurses. And basically, I was ignorant of all this knowledge, and it really showed in my interviews. So because of that, I had to literally just rethink how I'm going to do these interviews, how I'm going to tackle the medical applications again. And this is some advice that I'm going to share later on, I think in the next slide. But on top of that, I had no mock interviews, so I didn't really practice my interviews. And of course, low UCAT score and BMAT score was okay. But this is the advice that I want to give you before you actually, if you do decide to start your gap year, before you start, reflect over your past year. What did you do wrong? Could you have improved in something? Even if you did something well, could you have done it better, right? And this serves two purposes, right? So the first purpose is the fact that, okay, you'll actually improve your application or interview in the gap year, and it will show you that you've got a vital skill that you're sort of learning. As a medical student, literally, reflection is like hammered into us, because when you become a doctor, when you're sort of out there by yourself, in a sense, you're going to be responsible for your own self, for your own actions, and you will change as a doctor, basically. And if you take the time out to reflect, to understand, could you have done something better? Is this practice actually good or not? It makes you better as a doctor, and it makes you a better doctor to your patients. The second thing I like to say is make a plan. It's a bit hypocritical for me to say this, but I'll explain why later on. I did not make a plan, and I kind of suffered for it. So you want to make a plan around the sort of weaknesses or things that you want to target in your gap year, right? And by doing this, you will actually find out that, you spend more time and invest, more effort into that. An example I can give you is just like, you spend like, let's say an hour or two just, preparing your medical applications, or you might want to say, you might want to say that you want to spend like, 5 to 10 hours a week just preparing for your medical applications. Whatever you feel is best for you and that you can manage with, don't overburden yourself in that. And again, I'll explain that wisdom of why you should make a plan. And the next thing is to have a backup plan. So I was talking to my parents about this as well, and the fact that I really want to do medicine. Like, it's something that I'm just naturally inclined to, that I feel, and I'm just interested in the area of medicine. And the backup plan that I came up with was literally, if I failed my gap year, I would do sort of biomedical sciences or biomedicine, and I'm going to try and go through the graduate entry program. And the one thing that I found with having a backup plan is the fact that you actually worry about the next step rather than you start ruminating about, could you have done something better? Because I failed, I've done it for this reason. Do you get what I'm trying to say? It's the fact that it would just play on your mind, and having a backup plan would sort of prevent that from happening. And lastly, this is something that I didn't take into my gap year. I genuinely don't know why, but I had a journal or diary when I was doing my first round of applications. So, I was literally just writing the things that, that I was doing. And yeah, I wish I took that into my second year and actually started writing my emotions and feelings, because these things you can easily forget. And again, it's always good to reflect over them. So August came around. I got 1 A star, 2 A's, 1 B in my A levels. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take a gap year. If I've got the grades to at least to meet the entry requirements for most medical universities. So, I'm just going to go all for it. And something, unfortunately, not bad, but like basically, I'd like to mention this as well. There's just a link so that you can sort of compare medical schools on the Medic portal. This way you can sort of, again, strategically pick which universities you sort of want to go into. So that's something that helped me in the beginning part of the year, if that makes sense. But yeah, in August as well, I was working full time. I was working 2 jobs. Sainsbury's, I was working night shift, and I was working as a waiter at the restaurant. And I was putting in about 40 to 50 hours in, right? And that is a lot. I was either tired, I was either working, I was either meeting with friends, and I spent very little time in my actual application. And this really showed, because basically, next slide. Yep, here we go. So basically, this is what I scored in my admissions test. 625 UCAT, 5.2 BMAT, and I didn't do that much volunteering. And that's literally because I invested all my time into working, because I just got into the state of, I love money, I want to get more money. I want to see how much I can make in a month. And because of that, because I had literally no plan and no sort of self-checks, I just invested more time into working. And that's the first mistake that I've made in my gap year. But again, thankfully, if you pick the university strategically, you can sort of bypass this, and you can secure yourself, or you have a high likely chance of securing yourself an interview. So in this case, I picked Cardiff and Barts. Cardiff, I don't think they actually look at your UCAT. I think they look at your GCSEs. I could be wrong on that, but they definitely do weight your UCAT less than your GCSEs. With Barts, it's a 50-50, so it's between your sort of grades and your UCAT. So of course, because I did 4 A levels, I thought, okay, I may have a chance of getting an interview there. And again, with no volunteering, is literally because I was spending all my time, or I was tired, so I was literally sleeping throughout the day. And again, yeah, make a plan. Generally, it will help you guys out, and it will stop you falling into this pitfall of just making mistakes during your gap year. So then some more advice as well. Of course, balance your work life and your medical application. Give due time to each. And these are some of the resources that I still use: Medify, BMAT Ninja. And these resources are good. It's just the fact that I didn't spend more time on these. And please do look onto the QMO website. This website sort of gives you like a advice and tips on how to make a well-rounded application. So, you can sort of check yourself in the sense that, if you want to work in one area more than the other. So let's say volunteering, then you'll probably, look at volunteering opportunities in your area. Hopefully COVID will allow, because we've all had a rough year. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Please have a look at that. And secondly, this is something that I didn't really look into too much, right? But as more the freshers came in, there's a fresher who's actually a YouTuber. You have a lot of resources online, especially with YouTube videos. There are YouTubers like Ali Abdal, Common Medic. You guys have probably seen this before, and the fact that they actually make videos on UCAT, tips and tricks, techniques, how to sort of problem solve. And it's not just the admissions test, but also personal statements, which universities you should choose, how to tackle the interviews, for example. And they have a lot of wisdom that you can take. And I believe the Medic Life have actually done an event with SAMDA as well. So, if you go onto the Medic Life website, I think you might see the video there with SAMDA. And then January, March, interviews came around. And after realizing sort of how sad I was with the admissions test, at this point, I decided to, sort of self-check myself and basically cut down my hours. So instead of working 40 to 50 hours plus night shifts every week, I decided to cut it down to 30 to 40, more at the 30 hours end. And with the extra time that I got from that, I invested it in interview preparation. And this is some of the stuff that I want to show you guys in terms of what I did that was different from the year before. So this time, I utilized my connections with my friends and anyone who I knew who was a medical student. So at the local mosque, I used to meet a good friend of mine who was a Cardiff medical student. And I basically asked him that, I need some help. And even though he was very busy, it's just the fact that I used to message him once a week that has to help me out a lot. So yeah, there we go. So yeah, so with him, he helped me out a lot in terms of how to tackle the interviews, how to sort of think about certain aspects of medicine, what's good, what's bad, and it helped me out a lot. And he actually got in contact with Cardiff, I think it was the ISOC, I believe, who were carrying out mock interviews, right? So it was a long trek from London to Cardiff, but it was 100% worth it. Basically, by attending the mock interview, I made friends with the Cardiff medical students there. And again, they gave me some tips and tricks on, how to sort of do well in the interview. And yeah, it's just something that I wish I would have done in my first year, but, I got the opportunity in my second year and I took it. And then there's online materials and websites. So like I said, the Medic Life, I believe they shifted their sort of mock interviews online. So please do have a check of that. And obviously there's Medic Portal as well. And because I spent all this time, right, so I've decided that I'll actually invest into, preparing for the interviews. Funnily enough, right, even though I went to Cardiff medical school to, sort of do the mock interviews, right, I got an interview from Cardiff, right, but they actually rejected me. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, Imperial College London, they didn't even give me an interview because I didn't meet one of the thresholds in section A, I believe, of the BMAT. But Brighton and Barts gave me offers. And I obviously had to go with the better uni, the uni that's the best in the whole wide world, which is Barts. That's my opinion. You guys can disagree if you'd like to. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And the fact that I've learned so much from it. And of course, I can't do justice to this within 15 minutes. But there were so many other sort of things that I've learned. For example, how to be self-responsible, how to pay for my own self, right? How to plan things by myself. Most of the time, you stick to a rigid sort of school schedule, which is good. However, when you're by yourself, that's when you start learning things a bit more about life and that aspect. So that's why I say that even if you're not doing medicine, or even if you, do whatever, like a gap year can be so beneficial in that sense. So this is just a summary of the advice that I gave. So again, I think obviously this is recorded as well, so you guys can look over. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I genuinely want to say, guys, is well done. The reason why is because you're doing something that's very hard, that's very out of your comfort zone. And a lot of your peers, they might be going to a degree that they love and doing, but the fact that you're actually want to try again, that you're even contemplating that you want to go at medicine again. I well done for that. Genuinely, like, well done. That is such a hard thing to do. It's a hard decision to make as well. And yeah, unfortunately, I'm working, which is kind of it's a bit ironic, isn't it? But yeah. So later on I'm working, so unfortunately I can't attend the Q&A. However, please do email samda@bartslondon.com. Of course, CC your teachers into the email as well, so they know what you're writing. And just say something along the lines of, this is a question for Rafi, and then ask a question. And then hopefully SAMDA can get in contact with me and, give you a response back. So generally, thank you guys for listening to me rambling on. I hope you guys took something away from this. And I genuinely hope that, if you are going to apply for medicine again, I hope you do get an offer. So thank you guys and take care.
Thank you, Rafi, for your talk.
Okay. Next speaker is Maisha. She's a final year medical student at Barts, and she previously did a BSc also at Queen Mary's. Sorry, Maisha, I think you're muted.
Sorry, didn't realize. If you guys could go to Venti quick and just type in that code. There's not loads of interaction, but there's a teeny bit. So. Okay, I think I'll change slide, but the code should stay at the top, so you can still sign in. Okay, so again, I'm Maisha, and I just finished my 4th year of medicine at Barts, so I'm going on to be a final year in a couple of days, which is me. I applied for medicine the first time before my first degree, and I didn't get it, and I ended up doing a degree in medical genetics. So here's a question for you guys. What would worry you most about doing medicine as a second degree? You can just type it in and send. Yeah, finances is definitely a big one, and I will cover that in one of my slides. It is quite long, definitely, I agree. And there is always the chance of not getting accepted, but there's things you can do to work towards that. And yeah, stressful. Okay, so I'm just going to change now. Okay, a bit about my story. Like a lot of people who apply to medicine, I decided quite young that I wanted to be a doctor one day. I went through school effortlessly getting good grades, being praised for being smart and all that like stuff. Got the highest GCSEs my school had seen in years, which is really not saying much. I just didn't go to a very good school at all. Went on to college, and then suddenly the level of work I needed to put in was obviously a lot higher than what I was used to putting in. Thankfully, we had AS levels at the time, and my AS grades, they were They were fine, but they were nothing medicine worthy. And my college had this policy where if like they would only predict you for whatever you got in your AS levels for your A2, because most people do worse, not better in their A2. So I decided I can't really apply to uni with these, so I might as well just take a gap year. Thankfully, in my case, they were wrong, and I did do a lot better in my A2 year, so I used my gap year to apply for medicine. I know lots of people do exciting things in their gap years, like volunteering abroad and traveling, but I am the eldest daughter of a first-generation Brown family, so my parents were obviously like, no, you're not going anywhere. I worked in my local library for a bit, which was nice, but then I also did a lot of volunteering and like tried to build up my application. I did get 2 interviews, but I still didn't get in, and I know how bad many of you guys must feel about not getting in, because when I tell you, I literally cried my eyes out. Like, that being said, I also cried my eyes out 3 years later when I did get in, so I don't think my tears mean that much. But yeah, I then decided that I've wasted enough time and I might as well go with my backup choice, which was medical genetics at Queen Mary. I know genetics isn't the thing for everyone, but for me, it was literally the best decision I've ever made. Like, I genuinely love my degree. And the thing with medicine and biomed, like as a degree, is that you learn a lot of stuff, but it can feel quite scattered. But because my degree was quite specific, I was learning genetics in detail from like lots of different angles. And by 3rd year, I genuinely felt like everything I'd learned so far was kind of connecting, creating a big picture, which is really satisfying. So I'm so glad I did it. All along, like I kept an open mind about other careers, but I was also doing medicine work experience for medicine, to keep that option open too. And I realized that as much as I love my degree, I hated lab research and all those kind of things. And I still wanted the satisfaction of like being around people and working with the patient and like seeing myself improve people's lives directly. So in 3rd year of my degree, I reapplied to medicine and I applied to 2 graduate entry courses and 2 undergrad courses. But in hindsight, I probably would have just applied to undergrad courses just because everyone I personally know, I know it depends on the uni, but everyone I personally know that even got an interview had crazy high UK CAT scores, and mine were fine, but they weren't like amazing. But yeah, either way, I got into Barts in the undergraduate program, and 4 years later, here I am. Okay, because I've rambled on for like ages now, to keep you guys awake, I'm just putting in some slightly introspective questions. Okay, so I'm going to move on now. I'm glad a lot of you see another degree as an opportunity for self-development, because that's what it really was for me. Okay, so for me, not getting into medicine kind of confirmed all these negative thoughts I kind of already had about myself. Like, obviously, it's different for different people, but for me, I had actually prepared a lot for the interview and still didn't get in. And I kind of felt like it's not my grades that's the problem, it's me. I'm not good enough, or at least I'm not good at showing other people that I'm good enough. But you know what? Like, a degree teaches you a lot. You develop so many skills, especially through societies or extracurricular stuff. I joined St. John Ambulance, which was amazing, and like volunteering type stuff. I was also lucky enough, like I had lots of great friends who saw the best in me and made me feel like, yeah, you are great and you're likable, and like, why do you think these things about yourselves? You totally deserve to be a doctor. So yeah, use that degree and the extracurricular opportunities available to develop your skills, especially the things you think you need to like fix to get into medical school and be a good doctor, because honestly, you're not like one static thing that can never improve. And I'm genuinely thankful for the extra time I had because it's making me a better medical student now. Okay, so the reasons, I will always say I have no regrets. I made some amazing friends in my old degree that I literally wouldn't trade for anything in the world. When I did finally get into medicine, I already knew what kind of studying styles, etc., worked for me, which is useful because there is a lot of content. Medicine isn't known for being an easy degree. Looking back, I wasn't really ready to be a doctor the first time around. My self-confidence was literally zero. I mean, all it took was not getting in for it to be shattered. And I was quite sheltered as like a person. So I needed that degree to become who I am now. For you, that might not be so much of an issue, but a degree before medicine will definitely mature you in so many ways and it will make you better because of it. The big pro of not getting on the graduate entry program, which might sound like kind of sour grapes, but it is really hard. Like the first year of the graduate entry program is basically the combined content of the first and second year of the undergraduate program, which are hard enough separately, but when you combine them, like literally every grad I knew, they lived and breathed medicine for that entire year. The final point is very important to me because medicine is a massive commitment. And the first time I applied, I thought I knew what I was getting myself into, but honestly, you don't know until you're in it. But now, even when the future seems crazy and I'm sitting there like, why am I doing this to myself? I know there's like nothing else that I would have wanted to do more. And actually, for so many people I know, they thought they wanted to do medicine, didn't get in, and realized actually medicine was never the right path for them, and they're glad they didn't get in. I literally have a friend who applied to medicine and then she was doing biomed and she was like, I don't know why I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I don't even like people. And I was just like, no, she said like, I hate people. And I was just like, yeah, I feel like that's not a very good doctor trait. Okay, obviously it's not like all sunshine and yay and it's all amazing. I think I've said amazing like 50 times in this talk. There are definitely cons to doing medicine as an undergraduate degree after having done a degree. I hated putting myself through the application process again. It is really long. And honestly, I'm pretty sure half the reason I cried when I first got in, when I like got my offer for Barts, was because I just really, really, really didn't want to sit the UK CAT ever again. I have a whole next slide on funding because it is actually quite a big worry. And yeah, you definitely feel older, like less so now, but especially in first year when I'd already just done a degree, and then the people coming in were like 18 years old. There's a giant maturity gap between like those people and up, like for me. But now I guess that has kind of closed over time. Also, sometimes I do feel behind. Like I have friends, I know people who are literally buying a house at 26, and I'm 26, and I'm still living like the broke student cheap life. Okay. So funding, there's actually no easy answer, unfortunately. Like there are grants out there, but to be honest, I didn't come in across any that applied to me until after I started medical school, and these were like advertised through the uni, and even then there'll be like a couple of grand max, not really an option you can rely on. I know scholarships exist, but in all my time of like existence, I have heard of one person getting a scholarship, and it wasn't even at our uni. And most of the scholarships aren't like full scholarships anyway. Student finance does give maintenance loans for a second degree, which is actually really reassuring because there was like literally no way I would have been able to fund paying tuition fees and living out in London. But it is also reassuring for those who are planning to commute anyway, because if you're not living out and you can commute from home, I know grads who use their maintenance loan to cover like part of the tuition fees. Parents are obviously a big one. So for me, I was lucky enough that my dad was willing to cover the whole of my tuition fees. Like it isn't easy for him, but my family decided it was worth it. But I know that's not an option for everyone, which is why it's nice that you have like a couple of other options maybe that can help, even if it's not going to cover the whole thing. One thing I regret not having done is a part-time job in my first degree. it's not that my first degree was easy, but we definitely had a lot less contact time than I do in medicine. Like I tutored a bit in third year of my first degree, but in medicine I actually tutored a lot more. So clearly, if I had the time in this degree, I would have had the time back then. I say tutoring because A, it's what I did, and B, I think it's a good way of making money without working loads of hours because you can charge a bit more. And it's actually really useful for medicine because you learn to explain things to people, you explain like complicated concepts, and also teaching your peers and your underlings, I guess, is a big part of being a doctor. I know a lot of people get worried about tutoring because they're worried they're not going to be good enough or they're going to ruin someone's life. I've actually heard that like too many times. In which case, I'd say join a tuition center. Even though you get paid less, you get more guidance. And then, like, I started out at tuition center and then I went private afterwards when I was more confident. But yeah, a part-time degree would be useful because then you at least have something to fall back on. Finally, your 5th year is like the tuition fee and the maintenance loan is paid by the NHS bursary. So you have 4 years of tuition fees you need to cover, not 5, which is still a lot, but at least it's 1 year less than you thought. Okay, so overall, don't beat yourself up about not getting in. It's not productive and it won't change anything. And I believe that different people take different paths and you're now on the path you were meant to take. Everything is a life experience. I don't know anyone who has done a degree and now regrets it. You'll definitely gain skills that will help you in your future career, but to maximize how much you gain from uni, you need to make the most of your uni experience. So like join societies, take on responsibilities, volunteer, make sure you are building those skills so that when you do apply the second time, if you decide to, you have that whole armory of skills. Just because you didn't get in this time doesn't mean you can't get in later, and you'll be a different person by then. So yeah, I know some people are worried like, oh, what if I don't get in then? But I have had people who have then applied again and have gotten in. And I feel like I should put a disclaimer on this because this isn't like guaranteed. But most people I know that applied after their degree did get in. So I hope that means something. But yeah, just because you didn't get in this time doesn't mean you can't later. And keep an open mind about other future careers. In my case, keeping an open mind just drove me further towards medicine, and I realized that this is actually definitely where I want to be. In other cases, you might find something that works better for you. Either way, it will answer something. And there is no easy answer to the funding question, unfortunately. There are things that can help. It's not impossible, but it's not going to be easy. And that's it, the end. Thank you guys for listening and contributing.
For sharing your advice.
Yep, thank you. Okay, our next speaker is going to be Jaina. You can see her on the screen right now. She's a final year medical student on the graduate entry program.
Hi guys, I'm Jaina. I'm a final year medical student on the graduate entry program at Barts. I thought I'd talk a little bit about my pathway to medicine. So I first applied in year 12 and I got 1 interview, but sadly no offers. In 2015, I got my A-level results, which were A-star AB, and I went to King's to study biomedical sciences. In 2017, I applied to medicine again. I wanted to stay in London, so I applied to King's and Barts only for both their 4 and 5 year program, and I got 4 interviews, 3 offers, and I accepted an offer for the graduate entry program at Barts. In 2018, I graduated with a first from King's and started JEP at Barts, and now next week I'll start my final year of medical school. I thought I'd talk a bit about how I prepared for my second application during my degree. I volunteered at the Guy's Hospital Med Cinema, where I helped to take patients from the wards to the cinema in the hospital. I volunteered at homeless outreach sessions as part of the Hot Choc Society at King's. I volunteered as a befriender at a local care home, and I also volunteered on the bedside play team at the Evelina Children's Hospital. I'd already done quite a lot of work experience for my first application, and during my degree, I shadowed an oncologist at Guy's Cancer Centre. Your reference is also a really important part of your application, and I made sure to meet with my personal tutor at university regularly to keep her updated on my application. I thought I'd talk a bit about the undergrad versus the JEP programme here at Barts. So the undergrad course is 5 years and it's split into 3 phases. So year 1 and 2 are phase 1, year 3 and 4 are phase 2, and final year is phase 3. On the JEP programme, phase 1 is done in 1 year, and then for your second year, you join the 3rd years on the undergrad course. These are the statistics taken from the Barts website. So for the undergrad course, there are over 2,500 applicants, 800 are interviewed, around 400 offers are made, and approximately 306 students are admitted, meaning that 12% of people who apply get a place. For the JEP course, there are over 1,500 applicants, around 200 are interviewed, 60 offers are made, and 39 students are admitted, so that around 2.6% of people who apply get a place. I thought these memes summarise JEP quite well. JEP year is known to be an intense year, and it is very content heavy and stressful. Also, doing the JEP or the undergrad course means that you're going to be a student for quite a long time. So for me, I did a BSc and then JEP, so it will be 7 years in total being a student, whereas a lot of my friends left school and did a 3-year BSc and went straight into work. My top tips. So I'd say, like some of the others I've mentioned earlier, it's really important to apply strategically and to do your research and apply according to your strengths. So, for example, if you have a low UCAT, don't apply to a uni which ranks you according to UCAT. And once you filled out the feedback form for this event, you'll get a link to the SAMDA application guide. And on page 11, there's a table which lists all the universities that offer a graduate entry programme, and it outlines how they score their applicants. And I would really recommend having a look at that. I would advise you to apply to both a mix of undergrad and grad courses if you can, due to the competitive nature of the JEP programme. And finally, I know it sounds really cliche, but it is really important to believe in yourself. And I always thought that I couldn't possibly apply to JEP because it's so competitive and I would have no chance. But here I am, and if I can do it, you can. And finally, good luck. Thank you. So our next speaker is Abisha, who you can see on the screen. She's a 3rd-year medical student on the JEP programme.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Abisha, and yeah, I'll be talking a bit about how I got into the JEP programme today. Okay, so I, like most people here, made my first application when I was in 6th form, but I didn't do very well in my AS levels at all. I can't remember how well I did off the top of my head, but my predicted grades were not good enough. They were an ABB, but I applied to do something called the Partners Programme at Newcastle University. It's for people from like disadvantaged backgrounds. So I did actually get an offer for that. No, yeah, I got an interview for that programme, and eventually I did get an offer as well. But results day came around and I didn't even meet that. So I did not even get an ABB. What I did end up getting was 2 Bs and a C. And I was like, with 2 Bs and a C, I'm never going to do medicine, because, and the C was in chemistry as well. And I was like, this is really not looking good for me at all. So if there's anyone out there who hasn't done as well as you wanted in A levels, don't be discouraged. It is very much possible to do medicine, whether that be as an undergrad or as a grad entry like I'm doing. It's possible, and you guys have got this. Keep going. But yeah, so what I did, I didn't even have a backup option as well. So most people apply for 4 medicine choices in the 5th undergrad, but I don't know why I was so confident. I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to get an A in 2 Bs. I didn't even bother doing that. So on results day, I had to call the clearing hotline, and I was like, please just let me do any course that's available that I can do with grades that I've gotten. And they told me that I could do biology, and yeah, that's what I decided to do. I was like, yeah, I'd go do a BSc in biology. And to be honest, it was one of the best things I ever did. Like, I'm so glad that happened in retrospect, because that degree really helped me grow both as an individual and as like a student as well. Like I learned so much about how I study and how to work well during that degree. And I applied the second time round in my third year. So I applied to 2 undergrad courses. That was at Newcastle and Leicester University. And then I did 2 grad entries. So the grad entries I did were Southampton and Barts. And I got an offer. Well, I got all 4 interviews, got an offer from the 2 undergrads, got rejected from Southampton, and got an offer on the Barts JET program as well. So obviously I'm here today, so you can see which option I picked. I decided to go to Barts and do the graduate entry program. Okay, what I did differently the second time around. So for me, it was basically, well, the thing that let me down was my grades more than anything else, because I actually had done volunteering, I did work experience when I was in school. I'd done well in my interviews. I generally tend to interview well. Like I knew all of that was fine, but it was just my actual grades. A-levels was really, really hard for me and I didn't do that well. So I chose to do a degree that I knew would play to my strengths. Biomed is typically what people do, or like medical genetics or something with the word med in it. It's probably usually what people tend to go for when they want to apply for medicine later. But I decided to do just pure biology because I knew I'd do well in that, because I mean that's my best subject. And then I chose modules that I'd be good at and would be somewhat useful for med. So not all of them. Some of the field trips that I did were just animal ecology and stuff like that. So maybe not the most useful for medicine typically, but I knew I'd do well in them, and your grades kind of also matter, and I wanted to get a high percentage in my degrees, so that's why I did that. But I made sure that my research projects and my dissertation was a medical-based one. It was on Wolff Parkinson-White syndromes, so that I would have something to talk about in the interview if they did ask me about my interest in medicine from like a research perspective. And it wouldn't just be, I spent 3 years learning about animals. It would also be something to do with medicine as well. Other stuff I did include voluntary work. So I did volunteering at the Princess Alexandra Hospital. I was ward support, so I basically just went around talking to patients. And I was able to do 2 work experiences. So I ended up doing work experience like at the hospital that I volunteered at. I literally just went up to them, like in reception, I asked them and they said okay, and I was like, okay. And then the second one I did in Sri Lanka, so I'm Sri Lankan. I went back there and did that. Oh. Sorry, is it just me, but I can't see the slides anymore, which is fine. I can just, yeah, okay. And I did some extracurricular stuff as well. So I was in the boat club, I was the VP of the society, and I was a mentor for DebateMate as well. So I think that's kind of, for me, mainly what I did differently was that I focused on my degree and made sure I did well enough to get the grades to get into medicine. Yeah, now I'm just going to speak a little bit more about funding. So funding for the JET program is different to both undergrad and entry as a graduate on the undergraduate program. Basically, how it works is in your first year, you have to pay for like the first, I have the exact figures written on this board, so £3,465 of your tuition for yourself. And then you can get like student finance to cover the rest of the tuition. And you can get a maintenance loan as well. So it would be like the minimum is 4,000 something, maximum is 9,488. And then for the rest of your years, so I have 3 more years left, the NHS bursary will cover the first £3,715 of your tuition fee, and then student finance will kind of cover the rest of that. You do also get some additional funding, so you get £1,000 from the NHS grant, and you can get a bursary as well. It's not that much money, but it does help. And you get a reduced maintenance loan from student finance as well. The figures I have on the board are the ones for London. It's a bit different if you live with your parents and if you study outside London. But yeah, good luck, you got this.
Thank you, Abisha.
Okay, and our final speaker for the evening is Armisa. She's a 4th year medical student at Barts, but she's studying in the Malta campus.
Hello. Hi. Firstly, I'd like to thank the people organising this talk today, this event today. I think it's been really great watching everybody's journeys into medicine and really inspiring. And yeah, I've really enjoyed being here, and it's such a pleasure. So yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about my journey into medicine, and obviously I'm studying abroad at QMUL or Barts, Malta. And yeah, it's been a really fun journey, and I'm currently in my 4th year after taking a year out to intercalate, and I'll explain that in the next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. So yes. So yeah, although I am studying in Malta, I did grow up in the UK, and I always knew that I wanted to do medicine. At A level, I did biology, chemistry, maths, and I did music and further maths AS. So what happened essentially is that I had 3 interviews and 2 offers from Barts and UCL, but when it got to results day, it did not go as planned, the famous story, and I ended up with AAB at A level. So I missed my Barts grade by 5 marks or something. So I rung them up on exam day, the classic stress, and I said, hey, I was really close. And they said, yeah, your interview, we're looking at your interview grades, and they were really good. But unfortunately, we can't give you an offer here because you missed your biology A level. So what we can do for you is that there's a new campus in Malta, if you're interested, to apply for. And I said, well, yes, please. And I sort of, in a rush after results day, picked up the phone, had a quick Zoom interview with someone on the Malta campus, and it was really new back then. So it's only been it's only existed for 4 years. And yeah, I got an offer 2 days after, and then flew to Malta and literally have been there ever since. Next slide, please. So yes, what you need to know is that the application to QMUL or Barts Malta is outside of UCAS. You need 3 A levels at AAB or higher. You need to achieve that in 1 sitting, and that mustn't be longer than 2 years. So if you've had to reset your A levels, then they may not let you in. I will say though that some universities do still let you in even though you have resat an A level. So you can always just apply anyway and ask the people, before your application at the university, and they may guide you, because yeah, some universities say that they don't accept resets, but they do. Anyway, yeah, so then yeah, they asked me to send them a personal statement, which I sent, had a Zoom interview, and I had prepared a portfolio with all my volunteer work that I'd done at secondary school, all little talks that I may have presented that were, related to medicine. In biology A level, I presented something on telomeres and aging, and that was relevant, so I added that in. Little certificates, I did an extra first aid course that was quite relevant, so I added that in. And yeah, obviously my UK CAT and Barts need the UK CAT, but my UK CAT score was appropriate, my age was appropriate. By age they mean you have to be 18, basically. You can't be younger than 18. And yeah, I could speak English, so then I applied with that. So next slide. So QMUL Malta is basically a sister campus to Barts and the London campus. It's, the first year that it opened, I'm the first cohort that, went there. So it was very, very new. And that was also really fun, because it meant we all sort of grew closer together, because it was such a small university when I joined it. And it's the exact same curriculum as the undergraduate MBBS course at Barts, with lecturers flying over and flying back. Obviously, I think this year with COVID, it was a bit different. Lecturers didn't fly over because of COVID, and most of the lectures were on Zoom. But I think that was the case for most universities anyway. And And yeah, same curriculum, which is a spiral curriculum, and you sit the same exams at the same time as the London students, but just in Malta. And if you look at that picture on the bottom right, that's our university. It's just newly been built and it's super pretty. There are, there's an anatomy centre as well. I think it's a really, they've built it really well. It's really huge. And there's even little rooms like Breaking Bad newsrooms and stuff. And yeah, on the top right, that's a couple of my friends and I playing football, which we do every Friday. And on the left there is our MES Society, which is Medical Education Support Society. So yeah, anyway, next slide. Thank you. So yeah, in terms of accommodation, the university do supply you with accommodation in first year. You still have to pay for it, but I think it's a lot cheaper than it would have been otherwise because it's student prices. I think it's something like €400 a month, so that's £300 a month, roughly, including Wi-Fi and everything else. And yeah, there's a pool, which is really nice. My room actually looked exactly like the bottom right. And I was lucky in having an ensuite, but I think, so you sort of share with two others and then, yeah, you're given an ensuite just if you're lucky. I happen to be lucky. Anyway, next slide, please. Yeah, then later years when you're doing your hostel placements, they give you accommodation and you don't have to pay for it because you're moving between Malta, which is the main island, and Gozo, which is an island off of the main island, which is where the university is. It's not on the main island, but the bigger hospitals are on the main island. So you need to travel to and from when you're going to placements. And because placements are 9 to 5, it's not feasible for you to keep traveling. So they provide you with accommodation. It is amazing. My room for third year looked like the one on the left. And when now that I'm going back into fourth year, so yeah, sorry, I should mention that when you're doing medicine, you can take a year out and do a BSc, and it will take 1 year, and that's called an intercalated degree. And that's what I did this year. So I came to London, did my intercalated BSc at QMUL. I did it in biomedical engineering, got a first, and now I'm going back to fourth year. So yeah, so my degree will take 6 years because I took that year out. So if you're thinking about doing JEP, if you're in the 4-year course, you only have lost 1 year by doing that. So that's really not that bad if time is an issue for you. And yeah, in hindsight, because I was so scared, I sort of just took the offer anyway, and I don't regret it. I really love studying Malta, but I didn't think about doing graduate entry, and I do think that would have been because I was so scared about doing another degree and would I get in again. But if I could go back, I probably would have thought about doing grad entry and doing that. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind. Just a little tangent there. Next slide, please. So yeah, tuition fees are quite steep, which is quite annoying. So every year the tuition fees are €23,500 for all students. So that amounts to £20,000. I don't pay that. I pay £9,000, same as I would if I were in London, because I applied asking for a scholarship. So if you, for some reason, actually most people can't afford that. It's way too much money, in my opinion, but some people can. It's good enough, good for them. But if you can't afford that, then you just send them, a reason why you can't afford it, and I think you can send them parental income and stuff like that, and then they may or may not offer you a scholarship based on merit. The reason I asked for one is because you can't pay using a student finance loan, which is what UK students use. You have to use alternative loans. And because I was going there so last minute, it was so hard to find that. And, I wasn't prepared in those 10 days to find a loan and apply with a loan. So I asked for a scholarship and they said yes and agreed for the 5 years. But there are other students that have like 100% bursaries, and you know, have large chunks of their fees cut down, you know, based off of other schemes. And these you can find, actually I'll link it to SAMDA and then get them to send it to you, because I found a Google page that has all of the different ways you can get funding and scholarships for abroad degrees. Next slide, please. So yeah, as I said, scholarships and bursaries are available, and at Barts Malta they divide them into tiers. So I think I'm in like tier 3 scholarship or something, and it's called an academic scholarship. But there are people there that pay even less than me. There's a girl on my course who has like a master's in neuroscience, and she only pays 3,000 a year, which is really good, I think. Next slide, please. So I'll talk about quickly the benefits and the disadvantages of being on the course. I'd say the benefits, whether it's an international cohort, you can form a close relationship with the university lecturers. So yeah, you may not get that otherwise in a bigger uni. I say it's quite character building being in Malta, because I was just turned 18 when I moved to a different country, and cooking for yourself, cleaning on your own, and being so far away from family and no one to help you, it was really character building, and you made loads of friends, which was the advantage of it, and we were all quite tight knit. Healthier lifestyle. So yeah, it's quite known that when you go to university there are loads of like drinking societies and whatever. That's not really the case at Barts Malta. It's like very healthy lifestyle. We just have games nights where we play like chess and Monopoly. I think that's more like a cultural thing at Barts Malta. And yeah, it's like easier to excel with like hobbies. So I play the violin, and on the island of Gozo, I'm the only violinist that's like done a diploma. So I was able to like play for the Maltese president on one occasion, because it's so tight knit there. Like if you know an orchestral conductor, chances are they'll know like all the other ones in Malta, and then you can do things you would never have thought you would have done before. So that's quite an advantage of being in Malta. Next slide, please. So yeah, I'd say a disadvantage of being on the course is that it's much easier if you have a UK passport or UK settlement status, only because of rights to work later on and rights to settle in the EU. And obviously lots of that has changed with Brexit. So even having a UK passport, you have to sort of apply for rights to settle in the EU and study in the EU if you want to stay there. The university does help with this. They get you Maltese residency, but again, you have to try not to lose your residency card and things like that. And I know that people who are on tier 4 visas are having a lot of trouble. Another disadvantage is that it can get quite lonely living in a country that isn't as well developed as the UK. There aren't lots of things to do all the time. For example, there's no ice skating at Christmas. There are beaches and there is good weather, but yeah, that can get quite lonely and challenging. Another thing is that I think this is quite an important point for people who are knocking the JEP course. JEPs know what they're doing, and that's quite, because they've done a degree before, they're very on it, and it's quite like a reputation JEPs have. So when you're doing medicine at Barts, especially, they kind of rank you every year, and based on the ranking that you end up with after 5 years, you apply to different foundation schools based on your ranking in the medical school. So the more essay prizes, publications, presentations you do, the better you do in your exams, the easier it is to apply to the foundation schools that you want to. So yeah, so being in Malta, it's kind of difficult to present and to, enter essay prizes that are aimed at people that study medicine in the UK. So you have to sort of think outside the box at other things you can do to like get your points up. And another thing I'd say is that less developed sports societies, and the university is very new, so that can be a bit of a disadvantage because you're sort of you're pioneering everything all the time, being there. So there wasn't netball before, my friend and I suggested we start a netball society, and now there is. But if now that I'm not there for a year, is it still there? I'm not sure. So we have to sort of make things work on our own until the university is a bit older. Next slide, please. Yeah, degree certificate and graduation, just in case you're thinking about going to Malta. You do get 2 degree certificates, one that's valid in the EU and one that's valid in the UK. You also get 2 graduations, one in the Citadella and one at St Paul's Cathedral, which is quite nice and generous, I think. Next slide, please. Yeah, why did I choose this course? The biggest choice for me is that I felt really stressed out on on results day. So I wanted to graduate quicker, and I didn't mind going to a different country, living in a different country. I wanted to experience a bit of different culture. I really liked the fact that it was parallel to the Barts course and that you got 2 degree certificates, and that the Maltese weather is a lot better than the UK weather. So I thought, why not? I'll go to Malta. Next slide, please. Here are some pictures of some fun memories I've made along the way. I think this is my last slide. So yeah, in the Q&A, feel free to ask me any questions about Malta. I know there's quite a lot to talk about in 15 minutes, but I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amita.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now be moving on to the Q&A portion of the evening. So we'll have questions for everybody who's been speaking today. Yeah.
Okay, so our first question is, what advice would you give to your younger self? So, Maisha, what would you say for this one?
You're not like a failure just because you didn't get into medicine. Like, I feel like it shaped a lot of how I thought about myself for a long time. And really, I'm not that person just because I didn't get in. Lots of people don't get in.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think also, like, it's important to remember that it's not the end when you don't get in. And I guess that was the purpose of this event. There are so many alternative pathways, and there are so many routes into medicine, and you can try again. And like, we made it, so other people can too. Abisha, is there anything that you want to add?
Advice for my younger self: maybe revise for your A-levels a tiny bit harder. I think I could have done a bit better. That's very personal. In general, I agree with what everyone's saying, though. Like, not getting into medicine the first time around isn't the end of the world. Like, there are so many different ways you can get in, and so many different options available to you. So if you have the perseverance and kind of really want to do it, I would say go for it. Don't hold yourself back.
Amita, would you say the same?
Yeah, I definitely say if you really want something, then just push for it with everything you've got. Because if you're passionate and you want something, doors may close, but you can, one person might open a door, or somewhere there might be an open door, and you can still get to where you want to. You might just take a slightly different route or a longer route. That doesn't matter. if you really want something, then just go for it, I'd say.
Okay. Are mock UCAT tests a good indicator of the official UCAT exams? So for me, I use something called Medify, and it's quite popular, and it's basically a platform with lots of UKCAT or UCAT questions. It's like a really big question bank, and you can practice doing the questions under timed conditions. And I thought that was really similar to the real UCAT exam. So I would recommend that. I think there's a subscription fee, but I would say that it's worth it for that. I guess this was all like quite a long time ago for us, for when we did the UCAT. It wasn't even called the UCAT when we did it.
Okay. Are admissions teams looking at just degree classification or individual module scores? Dr. Braun, do you have an answer to this? Because I'm not actually sure.
Yeah, I do. So it is just your overall degree classification that's being looked at. There's so many applications. So basically how it works at Barts, and again, this differs at each medical school, is that if you have a higher degree classification, so for example, if you have a, if you did a degree and you had a first class degree, then you can have a slightly lower UCAT score. So there's an algorithm where it's 50-50. But we don't go down to module level. That would just be too much. That'd be too much work. That'd be insane.
When will the 2021 entries for Barts be released?
Want me to check this?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I don't have a definitive answer on that, but I do know that our admissions team are working incredibly hard because the A-level results just came out, as you know. So I would think within, say, the next month, when things settle a little bit and we get our new group in, that then they will look at updating the website. The Barts admissions team is very responsive. So if you want to know specifically, feel free to email them and they can give you more information.
Thank you.
Did any of you ever feel like giving up? If so, how did you overcome this? I mean, like, I don't know about anyone else. I felt like giving up like every every step of the way. How did you overcome this? I think it's because genuinely it's just because of how badly I wanted to do it. I wanted to do medicine with literally everything. Like, even now, like when I have a bad day, I'm just like, I can't see myself doing anything else in the future. When I think of what I want to be in 20 years, when I think of like what I want to be when I'm older, or like sometimes I have like a dream where I'm just like, I wake up and I'm 70 years old and like, what if I haven't done med and I'm not a doctor? I don't know what I'd be. And it's like, this is just me. So and that kind of like drives me. I'm just like, it's hard now, and it's going to be hard tomorrow as well. But like, if I keep going, it will get better. So I just kind of motivate myself. And I don't really know how you overcome it. I think you have to focus on the end goal. Because, yeah, it is hard. But, and you will feel like giving up. I feel like it's really, especially if you've tried multiple times. Like most of us here, I think, we were saying that we've had 2 applications. I know people who have done multiple applications for medicine, and it can be really, really draining. But I feel like if you keep going, the end kind of motivated me more than anything else.
Yeah, I think like we all probably have felt like giving up at some point. And in terms of overcoming that, I guess coming to talks like this helps, because you see people who've been in your shoes, and like it's inspiring, and it shows you that like that can be you too, like it is possible. So yeah, Maisha, what would you say in terms of how to overcome this?
No, I would say similar things. Like, I feel like I tried to explore other things, and like, especially during my research project, I was like, I hate it here. I really do like hate it here in the lab. I feel like that also was kind of like motivated me in a way that's like, I know that I don't want to accidentally fall back on my other options. And I knew I wanted to do medicine. It wasn't just I hate lab work and that's the only option I have. Obviously, with a degree, you can do so many other things, but I really knew I wanted to do medicine. So it was like, yeah, I was, as much as I was like, oh, I cried because I didn't want to sit the UK CAT again, I would have sat the UK CAT again so many times before I got in. Like, I was just very relieved to not have had to.
Yeah. And what about you, Abisha?
I think to extrapolate a bit, I think a lot of people feel like giving up. Even doctors sometimes feel like giving up. But if what you're doing is important enough, then you can motivate yourself in some way to achieve the goals that you want to. And that's how I felt when, I was sort of on clearing, phoning up loads of different universities, asking whether they'd take me. I knew that I wanted to do medicine. I knew that I wanted to be a doctor and to help people. And, what I saw in work experience, that's what I wanted as a life. So I couldn't get that image out of my head. And if I'd been turned down at that step, I probably would have tried 100 times over. So I completely agree with what the others have said.
Okay, thank you. What are the minimum requirements for Barts, specifically the UCAT threshold? I guess this changes every year, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Bourne, but I think this changes every year. And you can usually find online what last year's were in terms of like deciding whether you think it's worth applying to Barts or whether your UCAT might be below the threshold. I think it's worth like having a look online. And also, like I said earlier, when you fill out the feedback form, you'll get a SAMDA application guide, and in there is a table which will give the UCAT thresholds for Barts, I think, for the most recent year. But you should be able to hopefully find that online.
Yeah, can I just add? I just did a Google search. If you type in Barts School of Medicine and Dentistry or SMD statistics, it'll take you right to the website. So Barts School of Medicine and Dentistry statistics, and it will publish both for UK or for home and overseas students the cutoffs for the 5-year and the 4-year programs. But it does change year to year. So you have to use a little bit of common sense that, if you're within range of those cutoffs, then maybe it's worth a shot. But if you're, the range doesn't change that much from year to year, but it can fluctuate a bit.
Thank you.
What are my options if I don't have good predicted grades? Does anyone?
So when I was in year 12, in my AS levels, I got 2 A's and 2 B's. And I think it might have been Maisha who was saying earlier, it was a similar situation for me where my school predicted you the grades that you got in your AS for your A levels. And so I was predicted AAB for my A levels. And I chose to apply anyway. And I got one interview and didn't get an offer. And then obviously did biomed and reapplied. And I guess I would say you do have the option to still apply if you don't have the predicted grades that the universities are looking for. But just know that it decreases your chances of interviews and offers, and just be wary of that and consider other routes as a backup plan as well.
Yeah, I agree with what Jane is saying about even if you don't have the exact predicted grades, I would apply anyway. Like, I mean, when I was doing my A levels, I knew I wasn't going to get an offer from I wasn't expecting any of the interviews, to be honest, but I applied anyway because the experience of writing a personal statement with your tutor to help you from school was really, really good. And I wanted to do the UCAS application process, and I wanted to do the UK CAT, even if I knew I was going to apply again later. So I think applying, even if you don't have the best predicted grades, is a good idea in general. Also, there are foundation years and stuff that offer lower grade boundaries. You can look into that, see if you're eligible to apply. So I know Nottingham's foundation programme, loads of universities do actually. I don't know about arts though. But yeah, so maybe see if your predicted grades will match up to those programs and see if you can apply to that. You can take a gap year, work, and reapply the year after that. You can do graduate entry like me and Jaina are doing. You can do what Marsha's done. Basically, what everybody here has spoken about the entire evening are your options if you don't have the best predicted grades. You can do medicine as a second degree. Or you can take a gap year or anything else.
I definitely agree with what you said about
Or
how.
something else.
Sorry, I'll meet you go.
Sorry.
You
Wait.
go on.
Just quickly, if you're predicted lower grades than you think you're going to get, say you end up getting really good results on A-level results day, you can apply. You're automatically put into adjustment that you can apply for. So it goes sort of like the word for when you don't get your grades is called clearing. That's where you go to, where your UCAS opens up to all the other options for other degrees that you can apply to last minute with your grades. But you can also, there's another flip side of it that's called adjustment. And that's when you've exceeded your predicted grades. And I'm pretty sure you can apply for medicine with adjustment, but it will be offset by 1 year. So it'll be like taking a gap year because it's sort of last minute. If you have an interview and an offer, then of course it will be accepted because of your good A-level results. But I'd say it would probably, I think that you can even apply and ask for a deferred place. I think you can do that. Apply to medicine, ask for a deferred place just in case your A-levels are better than your predicted grades. And you may get an offer that way. I know one of my friends actually did that and got an offer to study at Cardiff, I think, with she had to, and deferring means, by the way, taking a gap year and then studying the year after. So yeah, just bear in mind that basically if you have good A-levels, it makes your life a whole lot easier. So don't worry about predicted grades so much, because you can basically apply it, every year with your good A-levels, and that's basically most of the application sorted, really, apart from UCAT and interview and stuff. But yeah.
Thank you. I just want to say that I really agree with what Abisha was saying about having the experience of a first application, like helping you in your second application. Like it definitely makes you more resilient. And like, for example, when I applied in year 12 and I sat my UCAT, I got 660. And then when I applied during my degree, I got 750. And I really think that having the experience of having sat the exam once and knowing like how to revise for it, I think really helped me. And having done like a personal statement before really helped me the second time. So I definitely think that it is a good experience and I would recommend it. Maisha, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you guys have covered everything, to be honest. So.
Okay. So are EU students with settled status eligible for UK tuition fees? I'm not sure about this one personally.
Yeah, it's a very detailed question. It's a good question. And obviously with Brexit being fairly new for all of us, I think the best thing to do is to email the admissions team at Barts or whatever university you're interested in, just to be sure. I've actually gotten this question from a master's student as well. So it's definitely a changing field right now. And I'm not certain of the answer, so I don't want to misadvise you.
Just quickly, I think I agree, you have to look it up. If you've lived in the UK for the past 5 years or something like that, then you are eligible. Say you sat your A-levels here and stuff, but you have an EU passport, I think you are eligible. But if you have a UK passport and haven't been living here for the last few years and then apply for student finance, then you're not eligible. So I think it works like that. But again, there are loads of caveats. So yeah, definitely check. But I think it's something like that. Just, yeah.
Okay.
Is work experience abroad still useful for applications? I don't know if anyone else has done work experience abroad. I did. I wrote about it quite a bit in my personal statement. Yeah, I did like a little section. Well, I did work experience in the UK as well, so I kind of compared it. And so the hospital I did placement in Sri Lanka was a private hospital. So I kind of like compared the difference between having like privatized healthcare and National Health Service. And I wrote quite a bit about that. I think any work experience abroad, UK, anything is just useful for applications, so long as you can reflect on your experience as well. Actually, this in general with work experience, shadowing a doctor is, I mean, it's what you're supposed to do, but it's not helpful unless you reflect on it. If you can reflect on work experience, no matter where you do it, it will be useful for your application.
I agree. So I did some work experience in India, and I spoke about it briefly in my personal statement, I think, but I do think that it's not about like where you go for your work experience, it's what you learn from it and how much you can reflect on it in your personal statement and your interviews that counts. And I did my work experience in India through a family friend that I knew in India, but I know that a lot of sort of companies offer work experience abroad, and that you can pay for, and it's usually quite expensive. And I think that it would probably be a really great experience, but I don't think that like necessarily doing work experience abroad betters your application, that makes it better than someone who hasn't done work experience abroad. I think that like what you take from your experiences is what matters. So it's okay to not have work experience abroad. Amita, did you do any abroad?
I actually didn't, but I completely agree with what both of you have said. It is just about, you know, you could do any work experience. You may not have even shadowed a doctor. Maybe you shadowed a nurse, or maybe you went to a GP surgery and you shadowed, you know, a receptionist there and, you know, saw patients that way. It's about what you take from it. I completely agree with that. I think just as a side note, there is a company called Gap Medics, I think, that do a sort of abroad work experience thing. But again, with COVID, I'm not sure all these abroad work experiences are still happening. I think a lot of people are even offering virtual work experiences this year because of the coronavirus pandemic. So again, yeah, I'm just going to stress again that it's how you write about it. It's how you, it's you know, what that work experience meant for you and how that opened your eyes to what the NHS is like and what healthcare is like, you know, in different places. Why that inspired you or why it may have upset you, that really matters.
Can I add a few comments to that one? I think what everyone said is very accurate, and especially the idea of reflection on work experience. This year, you know, the conditions you're facing are very different from what all of our panelists were facing when they applied. And certainly at Barts, the stance that we took for when we were interviewing is that we did expect that students would have done something and something sensible to prepare themselves for the career. Either online access to medicine courses. There were lots of opportunities to volunteer in the pandemic, you know, but we didn't hold them so much to a standard work experience because we knew that, you know, it was impossible to get into the surgeries at certain places during the pandemic. But having said that, doing nothing to prepare wouldn't have been excusable because there were certainly things. We had some students who did some really nice, interesting things, you know, telephoning neighbors who were in difficulty. There were a lot of opportunities. So I wouldn't just focus on work experience. I would just focus on ways that you can demonstrate that you have the qualities that we're looking for in a future doctor. And, you know, I think you can achieve a lot of those through voluntary activities as well, or, you know, maybe even things that aren't completely obvious. You know, I'm always impressed with students who manage to work while they study. You know, they talk about their time management skills and they work their way up to team lead and their leadership skills. So there's different ways to kind of demonstrate these things. And we're certainly taking a more holistic view of that because of the impact of the pandemic.
Thank you. And Maisha, do you have anything that you want to add?
I mean, I didn't do work experience abroad, obviously. Again, parents were like, no. But I feel like a lot of my personal statement kind of focused on why the work experience I did do was important for me making the decision I have now. And I don't think you need to go abroad to see that actually healthcare is important and being a doctor is important. Like, as long as you can talk about that, it doesn't matter where you've done it.
Yeah, I think the takeaway message: useful, yes; necessary, no. So if you can't do it, that's not that bad. But if you can, go ahead.
Thank
Could
you.
medical students
And
have support from the university? I'm a bit confused by what they mean by financial support.
yeah, me too. So I'm not sure if this is relevant to the question, but we're always emailed about scholarships and grants that we can apply for, which aren't like from the university, but they're like usually from charities. And yeah, so you can get financial support from outside of student finance or the NHS bursary by applying for the scholarships and grants. And we get quite a lot of emails. And like, I didn't think that I would be eligible to apply for any, but I found out when I started medical school that there was a grant available to students who study at either Barts or Cambridge, who are from a specific part of the UK, which I'm from, and you get some money every year towards your studies. So like, you know, you might not know that you're eligible for one of these scholarships or bursaries, but we're quite well informed about them when we start uni. So you might be. I'm not really sure.
Also, you do get a bursary as well, like from the university. Not just medical students. I think all students get it. If you're, I can't remember exactly what it's called.
I know if you're struggling, you can apply for like hardship funds and that kind of stuff, and you send off like, oh, this is, you know, what I've been spending, blah blah. So I guess directly from the uni, that is an option if you are struggling.
Yeah.
Just to add, Barts has a very good website about financing a medical degree and then what options are available. I don't know if somebody could distribute that afterwards, or again, you should be able to find that. And I would imagine most medical schools will have something similar. So there are different avenues of financial support. It's just very hard to summarize in a few sentences, and it depends very much on individual circumstances.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think that was our last question.
Yep, I think that was our last question. Which brings us to the end of this evening's event. We'd like to give a huge thank you to all of our guest speakers. Thank you guys so much. You've given us some really amazing talks and really been inspirational. So thank you very much for attending as well. So we'd also like to thank all the students who have attended this talk. We hope you've enjoyed yourselves and gained some useful insight into alternative pathways into medicine.
Now moving on to the certificates. If you scan the QR code, or alternatively, if you type out the link that we've put below it, you'll be taken to a feedback form. And this is really important because it helps us to know how we can support you guys as best as we can. And once you submit the feedback form, you'll be emailed your certificate of attendance.
Yeah, our social media and email is on the screen. So please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's many more events coming up, and everything that we do, we record and kind of have these live streams available for you to watch as well. So if you do know anyone who'd be interested in watching it, they can literally watch it at a later date. Yeah.
Thank you. We hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and thanks for coming.
Bye.
Bye.